Well, hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third webinar from the Bureau of Meteorology's brand new webinar series. For those joining us for the first time, welcome. And for anyone who joined us last week as we delivered the webinar on water forecasting, welcome back. Today we'll be discussing how to get near real-time soil moisture estimates for your location or catchment. So thanks for joining us, and without further ado, we'll make a start. My name is Claire Mullen, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. Angela is our producer and will help moderate your questions. We have a high volume of attendees today, so we will address as many questions as we can, else we'll follow up after the webinar if needed. Before we start, may I ask for your attention as we cover off some housekeeping items. Our broadcast today will run for 60 minutes with plenty of that time allocated to audience questions. This webinar is also being recorded and the video will be shared with you via email. For first-time webinar attendees, please see some helpful tips on your screen. Please note the chat box where you can send through any questions or feedback for the presenter. Please send your questions to us during the session and we will answer as many as possible during the allotted breaks. The conversation isn't just confined to the webinar, we welcome interaction on LinkedIn as well. So don't forget to include #BOMWebinars in your posts. Today we are very fortunate as despite recent illness, Alison Oakey is able to join us in the studio to help answer your incoming questions. Hi Alison.
Morning Claire.
Thanks for coming in today. All better?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So David is going to speak to us today as our primary presenter. We warmly welcome Dr. David Wright. Dr. David Peter Wright is a hydrologist in the Water Resources team at the Bureau of Meteorology. Based in Melbourne, he works on ongoing development of the Australian Water Resources Assessment Model and conducts training courses across Australia teaching people how to use the model. We're very much looking forward to hearing from you today, David. Can you tell us what you'll be focusing on?
Thanks, Claire, and good morning, everybody. Today's webinar will be broken up into two sessions. In session one, I'll give a bit of a background on why soil moisture is important, followed by a demo of the website of the Australian Landscape Water Balance. In session two, I'll use visualizations from the Australian Landscape Water Balance to revisit a historical flood and historical drought event. So starting with session one. Today's webinar is all about soil moisture. That is, the amount of water content available in the soil layer. Soil moisture is important for a number of reasons. When soil moisture is low, there is drying over large areas, affecting plant growth and the ability of people to sustain their livelihoods. When soil moisture is high over large areas, this can increase the likelihood of precipitation events leading to floods. For everything in between these two extremes, soil moisture is still important information for agriculture, horticulture, and for a wide range of applications. So before I get onto soil moisture, let's talk briefly about why droughts are so important, and in particular right now. The Bureau's drought statement, issued on the 4th of June 2018, indicated that 2018 is the third driest year on record for Australia. The drought statement showed rainfall deficiencies across Australia. Rainfall for the month was below average in most areas except parts of the southeast. Rainfall deficiencies persist in both the east and west of the country, increasing in New South Wales at the 5 and 14 month timescales. But what does rainfall deficiency mean for agriculture? For that, we need to look at soil moisture. The Australian Landscape Water Balance tracks soil moisture at different depths and can be a useful tool. Low soil moisture impacts pasture and crops, as well as runoff volumes into water storages. Soil moisture for May dropped to lowest on record over most of Australia. And soil moisture was below average for most of Western Australia, South Australia, New South Wales, Northern and Eastern Victoria, Southern and Central Eastern Queensland, and large parts of the Northern Territory. Soil moisture was above average across some parts of Northern and Western Queensland. Rainfall deficiencies accumulate in the soil moisture, which in turn leads to insufficient moisture to grow either pasture or crops, although the threshold soil moisture required will vary with crop type and growth stage, of course. So how does the Bureau provide near real-time estimates of soil moisture? Using the Australian Landscape Water Balance. The model behind the Australian Landscape Water Balance provides estimates of water fluxes and stores in the Australian landscape, including daily soil moisture, runoff, evapotranspiration, and deep drainage values from yesterday back to 1911. The estimates provided at a 5 by 5 kilometre grid cell across Australia, that is about 500,000 grid cells in total. A conceptual diagram of the processes occurring at each grid cell will be shown on the next slide, which I understand you may not be seeing live at the moment, but that's okay. But this, I know, all good, excellent. So it's shown in conceptual diagram on the right here. In each grid cell, the water balance is calculated from rainfall, that is precipitation, evapotranspiration, which is the total loss from evaporation and transpiration, runoff, soil moisture in the upper, lower and deep zones, and deep drainage. In the model, two types of vegetation are accounted for. Shallow-rooted vegetation, that is grass, and deep-rooted vegetation, that is trees. Outputs from the Australian Landscape Water Balance can be found online at the link shown in yellow above. So that's a bit of an introduction to the Australian Landscape Water Balance. Let's go to the first poll.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, David. That's a great start to our presentation today. We'll be using the chat box for our poll today, as we are also using that to take questions today, as Claire mentioned earlier. So the question for our first poll is, have you used the Australian Landscape Water Balance website before? If you could kindly let us know, A, for never, B, for a few times, C, for regularly online, or D, I'm a registered user. Please let us know. We'd be delighted to hear from you.
Thanks, Angela. And what is it to be a registered user, David, and how do we do it?
So a registered user with our products is somebody who receives tailored data from us, whether that be a period of data that is not available via the website, or a set of grids which can be clipped to a specific area of interest. So it is free to become a registered user, but in doing so, we do require a brief description of what you propose to do with the data.
Sounds fair. So how do I become a registered user if I want to?
You can send us an email. I've got the email address at the bottom of the slides here in further information, but that is AWRA-CMS or a CMS at bom.gov.au. Alternatively, you can also email us at aurams@bom.gov.au.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. And we'll have that information on our summary slide at the end of the talk if you didn't have time to write it down. Thank you to all our participants who've sent in their answers. We're actually getting lots of A's and B's, so there's lots of people who've never used it or have only used it occasionally. So today's a fantastic day for David to take us through the model and for you to send us your questions if there's other things that you might like to see that we haven't shown you yet. If they're there, we're happy to show you. Thank you. Shall we go on? Is that the result that you were hoping for?
Yeah, look, the Australian Landscape Water Balance is still a relatively new product for the Bureau. It's only been around since late 2015, so we're still building our customer base. So hopefully we've got a few people online that are registered users, but it's fantastic that we've got a lot of people that are just new and interested in soil moisture, and this might be their first interaction with the Landscape Water Balance.
Fantastic. So show us the model.
Great. So I'm just going to do a brief demo of the model. The Australian Landscape Water Balance website can be accessed from the Bureau's homepage search bar via the water information page, really simply just by Googling the two keywords BOM, and landscape, or directly from the URL shown here, which we showed earlier on as well. So I'll bring up a web browser here. We've got our Google page here, and I'm going to access this just by going BOM landscape. The first result that comes up here is the Australian Landscape Water Balance. So we can click on it here. See how this Australian Landscape Water Balance sits from the Bureau home, water information, and then the Landscape Water Balance here. Alternatively, we could have found this by coming up to the search bar here and typing in landscape. And that will bring up the water balance for us also. So here we see the initial visualization. The variable shown is root zone soil moisture from yesterday at a 5 by 5 kilometre resolution. Here we can see its daily time steps, the 19th of June 2018, and you can see data as output from this model in these visualizations for each day running from January 1st, 1911 to yesterday, the 19th of June 2018. Each day the model updates, and so the data for today will typically be available around 9 AM tomorrow, the next day. So here we can see we can choose any day in this section here. We can step back in time and the visualization will update for us here. Likewise, we can step back on any month. Just a slower connection today, it would seem. Normally on your connection you'll be using, it'll be a little bit quicker than this, but we can step back in months as well. So we can step to May, back to April. Likewise, we can go back to 2017 and have a look at the 17th of April 2017, 2016, and we can go back all the way here to 2005. I'll note here that data prior to 2005, that is 1911 to 2005, is available on request. It doesn't sit on the website here, but if people would like access to that data, it's available for free. They'll just need to send us an email and become a registered user, as I mentioned previously. Then you'll have access back to 1911. The aggregation here is by default. Now the visualization will just hopefully will get going for us. I'll try just loading the page again. Hopefully that works for us.
We've had a couple of questions, David. Is it all right if I throw to Alison while we're just
sure thing. Yeah, we'll work it out.
Running? We're having a couple of technical issues today. Alison, we had a question from John, or comment question. He said he's interested for winter crop forecasting purposes in the model. What sorts of variables could he get out for that purpose?
Yeah, good question. The model doesn't currently act in forecasting mode, but you can get current soil moisture and combine that with the forecasting that you get from the Bureau with the precipitation that's coming and use that for winter crop planning. We are working towards taking the model actually into forecast mode, but that's a little way off. So at this stage, you work with your expert knowledge, combine that with the current conditions that we can give you and the other information that comes from the Bureau. I think that's my best advice, given you're the expert on the land there.
Thanks for that. David asked, I'm wondering about unsaturated zone effects in the model.
Well, the soil moisture is, the units of the soil moisture is percentage of available water content. So 100% is at field capacity and 0% is at wilting point. So I'm not sure the unsaturated zone, I assume you're talking about groundwater coming up to the surface, and so this is what we model is the unsaturated zone. The groundwater and water table rise above 6 metres is not modelled as part of the this data. Yeah, maybe if you give a little bit more detail on what you mean by the unsaturated zone, or if I haven't answered the question there.
Thank you.
So also feel free to ask everybody today that if you'd like to follow up any of the questions, please send us an email or leave your email address as a comment today, and we'll be able to follow up your questions more clearly if they don't get answered today.
Is the web behaving now?
Hopefully, let's see how we go. So I briefly discussed this time stepping ability here. Next we'll talk about this aggregation. So by default, the aggregation is by day, but we can press here to aggregate by month, or we can aggregate by year. This allows us to compare year to year. We can step back in time. Likewise with months, we can compare June 2017 to June 2016. So I'll go back to yesterday here. So the details of calculations undertaken by the model that sits behind this landscape water balance are a bit complex to cover in a 60-minute webinar. However, if people are interested, they're welcome to have a look at the references underneath about the ORA-L model here. By clicking on here, we can see a bit more information comes up. And if you scroll down, there's all of the reports that describe how the ORA-L model, which sits behind the landscape water balance, behaves. Alternatively, you can send us an email hitting the provide feedback link at the top here. This will pop up an email and you can send us an email there. There's a frequently asked questions section. So if you have a question, you can scroll through here and see if that's covered there. And you can also join the modelling community, which will also bring up an email where you can email us. So on the left here, we've got a list of the variables that output from the model. By default, it's the root zone soil moisture, but there's also the upper soil moisture and the lower soil moisture, and we go all the way through here to runoff and precipitation. Underneath each variable, we can click on more information, and this will show us a bit more information about the variable. We see a bit of a conceptual diagram as well as a description of what that variable is. And we can see that there. Alternatively, we can click here underneath more information is download data. By clicking this acknowledgement here, notice, we can see that we can download the grid data in a variety of formats. These data formats can be accessed using GIS software or a variety of programming languages as well. So this includes Python, R, and MATLAB. They've all got some packages that can help us access this data. Now, moving on to the next thing. We can see here this in visualization. We've got root zone soil moisture from 0 to 100%. We can show this as either actual values or relative values. If we're looking at the actual values, it's an estimate of the actual value of the variable. And relative is a comparison of current day or month or year to a historical period back to 1911. We can see when I click there that this legend changes from highest 1% or highest on record or lowest 1% or lowest on record. So this means if we hit aggregate by month, we can compare June 2018 to all of the historical Junes back to 1911. Navigating around this map, we've got some zoom buttons here. We can zoom in and out. So if you've got a specific area of interest, you can zoom in there. We've also got our layers on the left here. We can show catchment boundaries, rivers, lakes, national borders, and we can toggle the results on and off. So you can, if you're looking for a specific region of interest, you can use the search bar, which is at the top of the screen here. We've been given a few options: location, catchment, or latitude or longitude. You can use all of those to search for a catchment of interest. Today we're going to look for Griffith. So we'll type in here the town name, Griffith. We can see here it's coming up with a few options here, and we're going to grab New South Wales. Here we zoom in on the town Griffith. Scrolling down here, we see that we get a caveat notice. And this caveat notice is showing that since Griffith is a town, it contains impervious surfaces, that is urban areas, and irrigated areas, which are both processes that are not currently accounted for in the ORA model, which sits behind the landscape water balance. And so this is just letting you know to keep that into account. by clicking exit there, we can accept the caveats and see the results.
It's looking pretty dry and Rufus, huh?
Yeah, so we're seeing a nice relationship here when we're looking at these relative values, where if we're looking at this time series, we can see that if we're looking from a very much above value, which is this light blue here on the 2nd of January, going to the lowest 1%, that is this dark orange on the 1st of May. So we're seeing evidence of the current drought conditions, as I mentioned earlier in the Bureau's drought statement from June 4th. We can also see some slight fluctuations here, but it's a nice downward trend in general. You can see we can hover over this time series and go over days. In the bottom right of my screen there, it's changing over the percentiles here, so you can see how by day the percentiles change. Over here as well, we've got a lot of options. We can zoom in, zoom out. We can zoom in and then reset our axes. We can take off the percentiles or put them back on again, and there's a variety of options there. So we've got two options to download this time series data. We can get it as a static time series plot by clicking here, download plot as a PNG. Or alternatively, we can click on this download CSV data here, which will give us the full time series data as a CSV. If you're playing along at home, just note here that this unfortunately will not work in Internet Explorer, but I'm using Google Chrome today and it's working fine.
And can you print, like, just print screen, print those pictures out if you wanted to show it to somebody?
You absolutely can. What I've done later on in the presentation is I'm going to go through a few of these visualizations, and I've just used the clipping tool to grab the visualizations to sort of highlight my area of interest. Yeah, so that's the main way that you would do that.
Thank you.
No worries. Alternatively, we can look at another location. So we can go Scott Creek, for example. Scott Creek is in South Australia there. Here we've got the catchment boundaries on, and we can see we get this caveat again. At the moment, we're looking at Scott Creek, the town, which is why it comes up with this postcode information. You can alternatively look at the catchments, and here, by clicking this catchment, we bring up the Onkaparinga River results. And we can see how that's fluctuated since the 1st of January as well. If you're particularly interested in the region, for example, this Scott Creek town in the Onkaparinga River catchment, you can see here in the URL, we've got all of this information saved. We've got the variable we're looking at, we've got the fact it's on a day, and we've got the date at the end here with the location. And so if you like, you can save this as a bookmark, and you can refresh, you can visit this time. If this is your region of interest, you can visit this page whenever you like, if you're wanting to, on a daily basis, check the results for this region. So this is all I'm going to cover for the demo of the website, the Australian Landscape Water Balance website today. So things that I've shown in this demo is I've shown you a few different ways of getting to the website. That is to Google BOM and landscape. You can go to the Bureau's homepage, navigate to water information, then to the Australian Landscape Water Balance. You can search for landscape in the search bar up top here, or you can go directly to the URL, which is the beginning up here, bom.gov.au/water/landscape. I've shown a bit of an overview of the functionality in this website, and we've shown how to download data as spatial grids or time series, and how to look up a location in the toolbar here. So yeah, that's the demo complete for today.
Fantastic, thank you. So we're up to our question and answer session. So by all means, send us your questions through the chat function. We've had a few questions already. So Niraj asked, is the soil moisture variable in your rainfall runoff model? Alison. She's looking blankly. Sorry, the question's too hard.
No, that's okay. When they refer to the rainfall runoff model, I'm assuming they're referring to the Australian Landscape Water Balance model. So the soil moisture is a store that is a product of the model. So when you say, is it in the model, it it is modelled as part of it. It's not an input. So we input the soil properties, and from that we calculate the water balance within the soil moisture profile, giving us soil moisture. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, hopefully. We had a question from Dan. If we are planning to use the water balance for multiple purposes or clients, do we have to register as a user multiple times?
No. So if you're looking for a single feed of the data for a particular location or a particular period of time, you just contact us, let us know what it is generally you're looking to use it for. If you have multiple clients, you can provide a general description, and it would be great if you could update us on the uses, but no, you just have to register once as an organisation that's receiving the feed.
Thank you, and we've had a few questions that have been sent to Ange as well. Ange, where do you want to start?
Perhaps this one from Dinesh. Have urban areas been considered?
Yeah, thanks, Dinesh. That's a really good question. So David mentioned earlier when he was going through the model that the two, what we call hydrological response units, so the two surface conditions that are modelled in the Aura model is grass and deep-rooted trees. At this stage, we don't represent urban areas or impervious surfaces. There are plans to include this, but that's why the caveat comes up when you click on a town, because it is not accurately represented in the model. That's not to say that you can't use the soil moisture that you're given from those urban areas. It will still represent a large portion of that area, but yes, there's likely to be more runoff due to the impervious surfaces, and the soil moisture is not likely to be as high enough underneath those pervious surfaces.
A great question from Dinesh. Thank you, Dinesh.
Thank you, and the next question is from Caleb. He's asking, can you access the data using R-Script?
I might take that one, actually. So yeah, accessing the data via an R-Script is something you can definitely do. What I recommend there is to send us an email, and we'll be able to help you with that. We do have both an R-Script that can help people download the data, but also a Python script as well. So depending upon which language you're most familiar with, we've got a couple of scripts there that allow you to download the data in various different ways. So please send us an email as a follow-up, and we can take you through that process there.
Thanks, David. We've got a question for Rob that he's calling it a question for later, but we might try it now. He said, we look at the BOM product, Mount Soil Moisture Index. It is roughly the number of millimetres of rain needed to saturate the soil to produce runoff. Can we use the soil moisture model in a similar way, i.e. will there be increased runoff when the soil moisture is 100%?
Yes, I think so. I'm not completely familiar with what that was, the Mount Soil Moisture Index, but yes, the soil moisture is commonly used to represent antecedent conditions, so the current condition of a catchment, for example, to initiate a rainfall runoff model. So at 100%, yes, there is more likely that the model will show more runoff because there won't be room for infiltration of that moisture.
We're getting lots of great questions today. So from Fiona, good answer, Alison, thank you. From Fiona, for relative results that we are only part of the way through the aggregation time period, is it comparing to the same point in historic months, i.e. is it comparing June 2018 with June 1 to 19 of other years?
Yes, that's a good question too. Yes, it is. So you'll notice that when you're halfway through the current month, it'll say at the top year to date or month to date. And so yes, it is. It is comparing with the 1st to the 19th of all of the Junes back to 1911.
So part months goes with part months.
Yep, all the way back.
Thank you. And from Gunnar, does this model consider antecedent moisture levels in calculating the current situation?
Yes, so the model has a warm-up period, like most rainfall runoff models or water balance models. So we That's a complicated question to answer in full, but yes, the answer is yes. It does consider antecedent conditions prior to 1911, which is the point at which it starts, as best we can. And please contact us and I can explain that more, but that's a bit of a complex question.
So hang out for that email at the end of the presentation and make sure you write it down. From Lisa, is that average for a 5x5 grid?
Yes, it is. So the hydrological response units are represented in each grid. So you may have a grid that is 80% covered by trees and 20% by grass, and then you model for each one of those different units. So what the grass is likely to do with the water, what the trees are likely to do with the water, and then that creates a weighted average for that 5x5 kilometre grid.
Thank you. From David, are there any actual soil moisture measurements, or is the model all inferences?
So we do have a variety of soil moisture measurements that we do look at when we benchmark the model. That is, we can compare the estimates from the model to a whole range of soil moisture probes across Australia. So yeah, we do use that later on in the process when we're checking to see the performance of our soil moisture estimates against our benchmarking criteria.
Yeah, in addition to that, so the model is validated against, like David said, with regard to soil moisture probes and satellite soil moisture, but it also is calibrated against gridded satellite soil moisture measurements. So, but it shouldn't be mistaken for a probe measurement. It's not an interpolated soil moisture product. It is a modelled soil moisture ultimately based on the water balance.
Thanks, Alison. We've got a heap of questions, so we'll get to as many as we can. We're just going to do one more for now so that David can continue. The last one for now is from Dinesh. He asked, sorry, Angela, am I reading the right question?
Oh, from John.
From John, I beg your pardon. Is it possible to download all soil moisture levels for a site, for all sites for a particular day, looking to compare previous values to current day?
So that's for a particular location. If you're wanting that back prior to 2005, you're best to contact us. Otherwise, if you select, like David mentioned, the CSV down the bottom, so if you search for your location and then go down to the time series graph at the bottom of the window and download the CSV, if you shift onto each of the soil moistures on the left-hand margin, so the upper, the lower and the deep soil moisture layers, that will give you the 3 layers at that location for that year. If you want a longer time series, you might be better off contacting us. Otherwise, you can download each of the years one at a time just through that download CSV for a particular point.
Thanks. You're a correct team together with a lot of information coming out of the model.
And
we appreciate the presentation and the questions.
Yes, and just before, David, you move on, we have had a couple of questions relating to the recording of today's webinar. So just a friendly reminder, you don't have to take notes from today's webinar as we are recording the session, and the recording as well as the presentation material will be shared with all of our listeners today. So thank you. David.
Fantastic. Excellent questions, everybody. So thank you very much for asking those, and thanks, Alison, for helping out with the answering there. So now let's move to session 2 of the webinar today. That is, we're going to use the landscape water balance visualizations to revisit a historical flood and a historical drought event. So example 1 will be the lead up to the Brisbane floods. So we're going to look at a period from December, around Christmas Day 2010 to January 2011. The second example, we're going to look at the height of the Millennium Drought. So the Millennium Drought was experienced in a variety of ways across the country, but we're going to look at a particular period, that is 2006, and we're going to see how the soil moisture was at this time. So viewers note that in the second half of the webinar here, I'll be looking at visualizations from the Australian Landscape Water Balance, as indicated by this red rectangle with broken lines here. So rather than looking at the whole page, we'll just be zooming in on this section. So let's look at the first example of understanding historical event using this soil moisture data, as well as some of the other outputs from the Australian Landscape Water Balance website. So while the Bureau has highly specific flood warning models for the Brisbane River and many of the other regions affected by the 2011 floods, knowing the current soil moisture is important in determining how much runoff a rainfall event will cause, as one of our question askers brought up earlier. So one of the main uses of the Australian Landscape Water Balance is to use soil moisture as an input to flood and reservoir inflow models. Just prior to an event, the soil moisture can be used to estimate the catchment initial conditions. Instead of using the antecedent precipitation index, Australian Landscape Water Balance soil moisture can be used to estimate initial loss. Engineers Australia now recommend this method in Australian rainfall and runoff. Soil moisture estimates from the Landscape Water Balance are also used for initial losses for the Bureau, water utilities and across the wider industry. Also, the Australian Landscape Water Balance can be used to identify large amounts of runoff occurring outside of the Bureau's usual flood warning network. So we can see what's going on in much more remote regions where main road, highways or railways may be affected. So without further ado, let's go through this Brisbane floods example. So in the lead up to December of 2010, the entire spring has been unusually wet with many rainfall events. And so generally high soil moisture was across all of Queensland. So let's look at the initial conditions across Queensland for soil moisture and runoff on the 25th of December, that is Christmas Day, and that's what's shown in this first visualisation here. So we see the highest 1% soil moisture over large parts of eastern Queensland and very much above average across most of Queensland. Note that in this visualisation here, we're looking at relative soil moisture, and you can see in the legend there that dark blue represents the highest 1% compared to historical data. White is average and dark red is the lowest 1%, as indicated in that legend in the top left there. As we can see, the initial conditions show generally high soil moisture over most of Queensland. Next, we move to the second visualisation here, where we see that the capacity for any initial losses was very low, as indicated by the absolute values of root zone soil moisture. Note that here we've moved in the second visualisation, we're looking at actual soil moisture, so dark blue represents 100% soil moisture, white is 0% soil moisture, as indicated in the legend there. From this visualisation, we can see that there are large regions of at or near 100% soil moisture, and so the capacity for initial losses was very low across the Brisbane region. Now we move to the third visualisation. Here, still on the 25th of December, we're looking at runoff here, and we can see that runoff from the east coast was already above average. In this third visualisation, we're looking at relative runoff, as indicated in the legend there, and we can see that runoff from the east coast is already above average looking at this visualisation. Then we move to December 27th. On December 27th, we had much higher than usual rainfall falling over the Burnett and Brisbane River catchments as a result of a Category 1 tropical cyclone Tasha crossing south of Cairns early Christmas morning. Note in the visualisation on the right, we're looking at relative precipitation as indicated by the legend there. And as you can see, we've got some high precipitation compared to the historical data across these two catchments. Now we're going to have a look at the runoff here in the first visualisation on this slide on the 27th of December. We're seeing the top 1% of runoff values occurring over the region. So the water just had nowhere to go at this point. Note that in this first visualisation here, we're looking at relative runoff, as you can see in the legend. And we can see that generally high runoff all over the Brisbane region there. Moving to the 30th of December now, we see top 1% soil moisture, so we're close to saturated, continuing extensively over the region until here, 30th December. Here we're looking at relative soil moisture as indicated in the legend, and we can see generally high moisture continues over the Brisbane region. Moving to the third panel here, we see top 1% runoff values continue extensively over the region until the 1st of January. So again, we're looking at relative values in the legend, and we can see this in the visualisation here over the Brisbane region. So this excess water moved down the catchments, and as more rain fell, flooding continued into January 2011, and the Brisbane River broke its banks on the 11th of January. So that's this Brisbane example, where we're having a bit of a look at some of the visualisations that can be used from this Australian landscape water balance. Now we're going to move to the next example. So this second example is understanding a historical event. We're using soil moisture data from the Australian Landscape Water Balance website, and we're going to have a look at the height of the Millennium Drought, and so it was a different experience across Australia, but we're going to have a particular look at this height for 2006 then, which occurred during the Millennium Drought, which was around 1996 to mid-2010. So while rainfall is important during drought periods, it is also important to consider ongoing soil moisture, as this is the actual water that is available for uptake by plants outside of rainfall events. Another use of the Australian Landscape Water Balance is to monitor ongoing soil moisture during drought periods, or just generally drier than normal periods. This is of particular concern in Australia, where the impact of droughts can be extremely severe. So now we're going to go through the second example, the height of the Millennium Drought. I'm sure you're all aware, but for background, this Millennium Drought did occur from around late 1996, with regional variations to mid-2010. You can see here that during this period, in this visualisation here from the drought statement, that there's large amounts of Australia experiencing prolonged period of dry conditions and lowest on record conditions. In this example, we're going to have a look at this Millennium Drought years, but also focus on this year 2006, which you can see the drought statement here. These drought statements are available on the Bureau website, and I'll have a link to that at the end of my webinar today. So let's have a look at the soil moisture as output from this Australian Landscape Water Balance during these years here. So here we've got a visualisation of all across Australia. These are all relative root zone soil moisture in the top row there, where our legend on the right there is from the highest 1% to the lowest 1%. I notice now that I've made a mistake there. Instead of precipitation being relative, it should just be root zone soil moisture being relative there. So sorry about that, but it doesn't affect that legend other than the text. So in the top row, we've got the spatial visualisations during the drought, and in the bottom row, we've got the soil moisture as a time series for all of the 5 by 5 kilometre grid cells situated within the Murrumbidgee River catchment, and the location of this catchment is indicated in the bottom right panel there. We can see it sort of going over that sort of southeastern region in the central area around Canberra. So starting with 2005, which was a Millennium Drought year, we can see in this first panel, as highlighted by the red broken box, we see a distribution of soil moisture across Australia compared to historical data, with large areas having below average soil moisture. In the bottom row, we can see the time series data, and we can see here that the soil moisture is in the average percentile range. That is in that middle band there, and we can see in the 2005 year. So next, let's look at 2006, which we're considering to be the height of the drought year. So we'll move across to the next visualisation along the time series there. Here we can see a large amount of the lowest 1% to below average soil moisture across eastern and southern Australia. And in the time series for the Murrumbidgee River catchment, we see that soil moisture drops to the lowest on record. Now let's move to 2007, the Millennium Drought year again. Moving across here, we see a distribution of soil moisture across Australia compared to historical data, with some areas having below average to lowest 1% soil moisture.
Sorry to cut in there, David. Just Angela here. We do have someone's audio appears to be on. So if you are not muted, we kindly ask you to please mute yourself so that David can present for us today uninterrupted. Thanks so much for your attention, David.
No worries. So yeah, in that top visualisation there for 2007, the Millennium Drought year, we're seeing that spatial distribution. In the bottom row, we see the time series of the Murrumbidgee River catchment. We see that soil moisture has increased slightly, but still in the below average range. Next, we look at 2011, and this is a post-Millennium Drought year. The Millennium Drought finished in 2010, and looking at 2011 here, we see that only small areas have below average soil moisture. Rather, most of Australia has above average soil moisture, as you can see in the visualisation here. With a lot more blue data. I'm trusting that my voice is loud enough.
Sorry, someone's still talking. David's having trouble. Is it Ellen, perhaps?
No, I'm at work. I just saw that you.
So we've got somebody on the phone.
Give us a moment, please.
Someone's gotten in, unmuted. Do let us know how you did that, because that's...
So what we're going to do here while we wait to resolve the technical difficulties, we're going to have a bit of a action replay. So going back to the first visualisation here, 2005, we can see the time series and we can see the spatial visualisation here. Moving to 2006, we see a lot more red in that southeastern area in the visualisation, and the time series we see drops the lowest on record. In 2007, we see it come up slightly, a bit more blue, but a lot of white in that southeastern area, but still persisting red areas. And finally, we're going to skip across to 2011, which is the post-Millennial Drought year. We see that time series come up and then down again slightly after 2010 for this Murrumbidgee catchment. Note that here we're looking at the grid cells just in Murrumbidgee, so that's why we're seeing this slight increase and decrease. And there we see how the soil moisture varies during this time period. Cool. So that's the end of that second example there. So now we're going to step to the second poll question.
Yes, thank you, David. Angela here again. So our poll question, and you'll see it there on your screen, ladies and gentlemen, we once again ask you to please type your answer choices through to us in the chat. So in case anyone can't see it there, I'll read it out quickly. How important are soil moisture estimates to your or your business's needs? We have A, not of interest at all. Hopefully that's not going to be a popular answer choice. We also have B, qualitative estimates are most important. C, quantitative estimates are most important. Or D, both qualitative and quantitative estimates are important.
So I appreciate here we've got some scientific language in the qualitative and quantitative.
Absolutely.
So the people that need to know what those words mean will know what those words mean. But here we're saying, you know, like qualitative is it drier than normal? Quantitative being like, is that the actual value? So for a lot of our users, they'll be looking at, maybe they're more interested in just the relative and the qualitative estimates. Maybe they're just interested in quantitative estimates, or maybe they're interested in both.
Perhaps that's the case. And look, we are getting D as a very popular answer choice. So is that kind of what we're hoping to see?
Look,
I'd say the majority is definitely D.
Look, that is absolutely fantastic for us to see. I didn't expect this outcome. I expected a lot of people hopefully to be at B and C, but it's absolutely fantastic that we've got people interested in both qualitative and quantitative estimates. This is an exciting opportunity for all of these people to hopefully engage with the Australian Landscape Water Balance. Everybody fitting in this category, please do send us an email. I've got the email at the bottom of the slides there, but We've got Aura MS, AWRAMS, @bom.gov.au. So please send us an email there if you're wanting to find out more information about how to obtain these things.
That's great. So thank you for everyone for taking the time to engage with us on that little poll, and very interesting result there. So we might move on with a little bit of Q&A, if you're up for that, David?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's go to Q&A session 2, and that's the end of the otherwise content for the day. So it looks like we've got about 10 minutes there for questions.
Fantastic, David. Thank you for your presentations in amongst all the
That's okay.
difficulties today.
The show must go on.
David and Alison, mostly Alison, do you want to take some more questions?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe we can start with Marsha. She's asking, what infiltration rate did you use in the modelling? Do you have maps with infiltration rate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the infiltration rate will depend on the soil properties, and the soil properties vary across the country, and they are put into the model based on the Australian Soil Resources Information System data. So that comes out for on a continental scale for right across Australia, and we take the properties mapped in that data set, apply pedotransfer functions to get the hydraulic properties of that soil, and then the infiltration rates are calculated from that. And whether the water infiltrates will also depend on how full the profile is in the model. So if the bucket is full at 100%, there will be no longer infiltration rate. Otherwise, it will depend on the soil properties as represented by ASRIS.
Thank you, Alison. Let's go around again just once more for Narad. She asked a question earlier that was, is the soil moisture variable in your rainfall runoff model? And then he later asked, is that an extract you're presenting? Does that help answer the question? Is that a, sorry? So he asked, is that an extract you are presenting? Does that make the question clearer?
So as an output of the soil moisture as an output, I interpret the
extract?
Yeah, so that's where we can extract that data using the website here. So here we've got the upper soil moisture, the lower soil moisture, the deep soil moisture. If you wanted to understand how these different soil moistures fit into the general model, if you go to this About the Aura L model tab, you'll see this conceptual diagram I had earlier in my slides. And here we can see that this upper soil moisture is from 0 to 0.1 metres. The lower soil moisture is from 0.1 to 1 metre. And the deep soil moisture is from 1 to 6 metres. We also see those other processes here, the precipitation as an input to the water balance, a loss of actual evapotranspiration. We've got the runoff here, as well as the deep drainage. And we've got these two HRUs, the hydrological response units, the deep-rooted, the trees we can see here, and the shallow-rooted, the grasses we can see here as well.
Thanks, David. Dinesh asked, I heard that BOM is going to develop a 1-by-1 kilometre grid resolution. When is that going to be? Finer and finer. The computer has to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, that's a great question, and yes, that is an accurate rumour, it might be said. We are currently working on taking the model to a 1-by-1 kilometre grid. It's not clear whether that will have a national coverage at this stage, but it will also introduce a series of new hydrological response units, including irrigation areas and urban areas. So that's a pretty exciting new area for us. When it will be released,
watch this space.
Watch this space. It won't be in the next few months, I can tell you that much. David, do you?
Yeah, so I guess with any changes to the model, that we need to ensure the scientific vigour before we incorporate any of these things. So watch this space in the next 24 months.
We are testing it at the moment, so if you are interested in being involved with that, contact us. We've got some certain areas that we have taken down to 1 kilometre, so we're always looking for people to test the science and the data that's coming out of that. So, yeah, get in touch.
Good, there's a lot on offer for this webinar, so we're glad you joined us. We have a question from Ellen. So by soil properties, do you mean soil type, or is the model based on soil moisture data?
So no, the model is not based on soil moisture data. It is based on, when I say soil properties, I just mean textual class and physical soil properties. It doesn't take, from those soil properties you can estimate hydraulic conductivity and the behaviour of that soil, but no, there is the only input of actual soil moisture into the model is to calibrate against the satellite soil moisture. Otherwise, we validate against the soil moisture probes, and the model does actually perform really quite well against that. There is one of the reports that's in the About page on the website that David directed you to. It is a validation report, and it shows the benchmarking of how the model performs against those soil moisture measurements. And in most cases, it does a pretty good job. So it's worth having a look through that and seeing if your area is well represented.
Thank you. Abdul asked, do you do model validation taking some actual soil moisture?
Yeah, I think that's probably what I've just answered then. The soil moisture probes that we measure against are a series of established networks, and they're not bureau measurements as such, but they are well known. The Murrumbidgee set. There's some that come in from the state governments as well. Yeah, so yes, I think I just answered that question.
Thank you. We've got a heap of questions we probably won't get to today. We're just going to do Marsha real quick. What infiltration rates did you use in the modelling? Do you have maps with infiltration rates?
We did that one.
Oh, sorry. my bad. Ben asked, is relative data over the whole period or just the period displayed, i.e. year just 2005, 2018, or the whole data set?
No, yeah, so the relative data is comparing right back to 1911. So when you see that May 2018 is dry, that is relative to the last 100 and however many years, 100 plus years of Mays compared, and then ranked against each other, and then you will see that it's drier than average.
Thanks, Alison. We're just about to run out of time with our webinar, and we've still got a few more questions, so we might at least finish up on the content and then stay on a couple more minutes if you've got enough time just to finish off the questions.
Sure thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Sounds fine by me.
David, would you like to summarise your talk and talk about next steps and that all-important email for more questions?
No worries at all. So thanks everyone for listening to our webinar today. It's fantastic to have all of these questions. We're really excited about continuing this conversation and dialogue with you, so please do get in contact with us. Just to give an overview of what I went through today, in session 1 we had a bit of a background to soil moisture and what that's all about, then a demonstration of the Australian Landscape Water Balance website. In session 2 we had 2 examples, a flooding example, the lead up to the Brisbane floods. Then we looked at that height of the Millennium Drought and we stepped through the years and we saw how soil moisture varied. If you're wanting more information here, after the talk today, if you wanted to have a look at the Bureau's drought statement, please visit the Bureau website. That's bom.gov.au/climate drought. You should be able to find that using those 2 keywords on a Google search also. Also, if you want to have a look at this Australian Landscape Water Balance, visit the website bom.gov.au/water and landscape, or also you can access that through a variety of methods I showed earlier. If you're really interested in getting technically involved and running the model behind the Bureau's Australian Landscape Water Balance, that's the Aura-L model, which we've got as an Aura community modelling system, the Aura CMS. There's a link there to GitHub so you can see what that's all about, but also get in contact with us via the email address in the bottom here, and we can make you a registered user. You can then get access to our data as well as the Aura CMS. So there's actually 2 email addresses, so sorry about the confusion here. I've got on the side here auracms@bom.gov.au. Alternatively, you can email us at aurams@bom.gov.au. That's Aura Modelling System at bom.gov.au. So either of those two, please send us an email. We'll have our team respond to those emails as quickly as possible for you.
Thank you.
And that's the end of the talk today.
That's it. That's the end of our allotted time for our webinar. So a very big thank you to both David and Alison for your time and expertise today and sharing your wisdoms. To all of our audience, thank you for tuning in and joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the session and we do hope you'll join us next time. If you would like to join the conversation, please use the hashtag BOMWebinars in your LinkedIn posts. And our next webinar is for next week, is on Thursday the 28th of June at 2 o'clock. In that broadcast, we'll be discussing how to make groundwater visible, so don't forget to register. As mentioned earlier, this session has been recorded. We will have the video ready for your on-demand viewing pleasure in the next few days. So if you want to go over the things that David showed you today, just stay tuned to your email. And finally, but most importantly, we want your feedback. It is our aim to bring you the highest possible quality webinars, but we can't do that unless we share your experiences with us. Once we close the webinar, a short survey will pop up on your screen, and we'd be very grateful if you could complete that anonymously for us. Once again, thank you very much for your time. For those who have to leave us, hope we see you again soon.
If anyone would like to stay on for a few more minutes as we answer a few more of your questions, please feel free to do so. We're happy to have you.
Thanks for staying on. We're going to go to Ian's question. He asked, is it possible to obtain data as millimetres of water storage as opposed to percentage storage? Good question.
Yeah, that is good. It's a common one too. Yes, you can receive the data in millimetres, so that's millimetres water in the particular profile that you request. We don't display it on the website. We represent it as percentage full because the millimetres does imply a level of accuracy or precision that is probably a bit beyond the model, but it definitely we definitely have it available, and you can input it. People are usually looking for it to input it into a subsequent model as a representation of water and soil profile. But yeah, just get in contact and I can provide the grids or a time series of that data.
Thank you. John asked, how are wetlands represented in the model?
Oh, that's a good question too. As David mentioned, yeah, we at this stage only trees and grass are represented in the model. Wetlands, so open water is another one that is coming as part of the urban and irrigation HRUs in the next few months, but at this stage wetlands are not represented in the model. They will likely be represented as just as grass at this point.
Timothy asked, how do you delete a point from the map once you've dropped one?
Good question.
So we've dropped a point here on Scott Creek. So if you're wanting to have a look at somewhere else, then you can just type in another location. So
if you want to get rid of it, I think you can just press in the ocean, can you? Or?
Yeah.
Thank you. What a great interactive session. From Zhang, land use changed over time. How were the changes considered in the model?
Yeah. The land use in the model is represented by the hydrological response units, and that is based on satellite data, and that is a snapshot in time and remains static back in time. So no, in that sense, land use change is not represented in the model. It is just a snapshot of relatively recent. Yeah, there was an original, one of the purposes of Aura was to represent that, and so we hope to get it in over time. But at this stage, it's just the base level snapshot of land use.
Thank you. From Niraj, in some southern catchments, groundwater depth is correlated to water loss. How accurately your soil moisture indicate correlation to groundwater levels?
Yeah, so this is similar to the question earlier. Groundwater is not currently represented in the model. The only way it is represented is the drainage out the bottom of the soil profile at 6 metres. So I'm aware that the groundwater comes closer to the surface than that, but it is not represented in the model in the sense that evapotranspiration cannot occur or evaporation from the water table close to the surface. We are currently doing some research with Melbourne University on introducing water table level into the model. So watch this space, but at this stage it's not captured.
Thank you. We're still trying to get through all our questions. We're just going to do one more. If we haven't got to you today, by all means email us on that auracms@bond.gov.au address. The last one's from Lisa. Can this model be run on a finer scale for a particular area that is only 12 by 6 kilometres, therefore would be great with results in the 200-metre grid?
This might be a candidate for running the Aura community modelling system. So I might throw to David on this one.
Fantastic suggestion. Yeah, so this is where a bit earlier on I was talking about the Aura community modelling system. That's the Australian Water Resources Assessment Community Modelling System, or the Aura CMS. And that's where at the end of my presentation, the summary there, I had a slide. I just have this link here to the github.com/auracms/aura_CMS. So we released the Aura community modelling system because we're really excited about other people having a bit of a play with the model and making their own changes and seeing if they can also improve the way that the model works by, changing the way that physical processes are described, changing the scaling, the fine scaling. So you're most welcome to do this yourself if you like. So you can go on and go to GitHub there. You can grab the model, and you can run it on your own computers at your own institution or your own workplace there. Also, unfortunately, it's a little bit late for this, so apologies for mentioning this, but we do have an upcoming training at the end of the year in Melbourne. But this week, we'll be going up to Brisbane, where we'll be teaching a whole range of people about how to use this community modelling system this Thursday and Friday. So we'll have more of these trainings coming up later on in the year. So if you are interested in learning about these, then, yeah, you can also get involved with those. So send us an email and we can let you know when they come up in the next year or so.
Fantastic. Well, what a great webinar, and thanks again both to David and Alison, and to all our participants for your great questions. It's been very productive and interactive for us all. So thank you and goodbye, and we'll send you the email to the presentation when we can. Thanks everyone. See you next time.
Bye.
See ya.